Stats23 here. Today we have 4 awesome EDC knives and 4 knife reviews. First up, we have the Kaiser Spot Front Flipper. This one comes in at $88, and they're calling it a clip point. You could call it a reverse tanto, whatever you want, and it is in 154 cm steel. You have a very, very bulky tip right there for doing piercing tasks and doing nice drag cuts. You get very good precision. It has a black finish on it, just a flat black that usually holds up fairly well. Now your grind is, not super high, and it is a flat grind, so it's not super thin behind the edge or anything. It comes in around 21 thousandths behind the edge, but it came with a very, very sharp edge, and it performed rather nicely. One thing I did notice during my cutting, whenever I got to the rubber tubing of my cutting, that this black coating did cause a little bit of drag, and the thicker behind the edge thickness did cause it to slow down just a little bit. Not that bad though. The ergos during the cutting were pretty good for the most part. However, whenever I did stuff like the wood carving, the narrow handle scales have to be gripped a lot tighter to keep the scales from spinning in the hand. It's usually the case whenever you don't have really thick handles, but it's not something I would probably normally be doing with this knife anyway. I didn't have any hot spots. I could feel the clip, but it's low enough profile that it didn't cause any issues or made me feel like I had to put on gloves during the wood carving. It's definitely going to be excellent doing, like I said, those precision cuts and any kind of piercing task, into the potato chips or whatever you want to do with it. The edge held up great. Kaiser does a really good job with their 154 cm, at least in my experience. The knife has aluminum scales that are pretty much contoured. They have a lot of milling on them, and they have this like powdery coating on it, the aluminum anodizing or whatever, or powder coat is kind of like that chalky feel, so it adds a little bit of grip to it. You have a flow-through construction, 1 hourglass standoffs. It is a deep carry tip-up pocket clip, but it is right-hand carry only. The front flipper works really well because it sits above the pivot, above the scales, and it's nice and rounded. At first, I thought the jimping was going to be slippery because of that coating, but it performs nicely. You can do the reach around, and really, really nice action because of the bearings, and you can do the regular front flipper action. It's a nice slim and sleek design. If you're into stuff like that and you want a nice, more lightweight carry, more easy to carry in the pocket because of its thin nature, this is a good option to choose at the $88 price point. Size comparison between the Rat Model 1 and 2, it's smaller than the Rat Model 2. Now, the nitpicks I have with this one, I wish it would have been black wash on that finish. I think it looks a lot better and it doesn't cause as much drag. Wish they would have opened up the sharpening choil a little bit to give you a little bit of sharpening life, because it will start to widen up after probably the first sharpening or so. And lastly, we just talked about it. It's not tapped for left-handed carry. So other than that, I think it was a good knife. It's nice and fidgety, and it's easy to carry. So yeah, I could recommend this one. Number 2 is the Kaiser Guru, a Matt Degnan design. You have this nice sheep's foot blade of 154 cm steel, and this one has that black wash finish that I was talking about. Beautiful blade shape. You have a perfect amount of belly to do just about any type of cutting that you put in front of it. And the tip is below the actual pivot, so it's not going to be a very swoopy belly. It's going to perform nice on flat cutting surfaces, and I found that it performed very, very well. It came with an extremely sharp edge and was slicing like nobody's business. There isn't any jimping on top of the spine. However, I didn't find a need for it. I had no problems. I was nice and locked in, and especially in the forward finger choil on that blade, this thing slices great, and I had tons of control and a lot of power. I could get right up on what I'm cutting, like when I was doing the wood shaving, I could get right up on that edge so I could be real precise and deliver it with my cuts. And it stayed sharp throughout the entire test. It had a good bit of bite to the edge. And also that tip being low like that, you're going to be able to do detail work really nicely, drag cuts. The pinch grip on this knife was nice and comfortable. The handle scales are contoured, so it was really comfortable. No hot spots to speak of. I didn't have any problems with the pocket clip getting in my way. The knife was very slicey because of the sharp edge, and it's 16 thousandths behind the edge, so it performed like a champion. Nothing really gave it any trouble, and like I said, stayed sharp the entire time. And at the end of the testing, it felt like it could have cut for another long while. The knife also has very, very smooth action, nice and snappy thumb stud deployment on bearings with a ceramic detent ball and ceramic ball bearings. Easy access to that thumb stud. If you wanted to, you could slow roll it out as well. Like I said, the handle scales are nice and comfortable because they're contoured black canvas micarta that offers a good bit of grip. It's left where you can feel the actual canvas there. Very nice. It have a lanyard hole for the lanyard people out there. It is a flow-through construction, inset stainless steel liners, and you have a deep carry tip-up right-hand pocket clip. It isn't tapped for left-handed carry. That's unfortunate once again. You have good access to that lock bar, nice and comfortable to disengage. Nice and solid lockup, absolutely no play in any direction on my particular knife, and definitely one that I could highly, highly recommend. Next up, we have the Kaiser Mad Tanto. This is a design collaboration with Damn Designs, and I could see that right off the bat. You have a nice drop point Tanto blade of 154 cm steel. Beautiful stonewash finish here. The blade has a nice deep hollow grind on the on the straight edge portion, and the Tanto portions has a flat grind on it. Nice and thin geometry, coming in at 14 thousandths behind the edge on the hollow ground portion. The knife came very sharp, and the straight edge portion was super, super slicey. It performed so very well. And since it has a drop point Tanto, the point is in line with the center of the pivot, making it easy to use the point for doing drag cuts because that point is lower. It was also easy to use that secondary point from the Tanto. The handle scales, being nice and wide like they are, were nice and comfortable. The forward finger choil let me get right up to what I was cutting, and I had a lot of control, a lot of power going into everything that I was cutting in hand. This thing sliced very, very well all the way to the end, and I really, really enjoyed using it. I don't mind the Tantos as much whenever they have the drop points like that. They're just more functional for the type of stuff I use, even though Tantos still aren't my go-to blade shape. It's just a lot more useful of a blade whenever it drops down like that. You still have great piercing capabilities with that tip, and both the Tanto portion and the flat edge portion on this knife were ridiculously sharp. And once again, they performed outstanding all the way to the end and still felt really sharp by the end of the testing. This is a button lock, so when you release that button, this thing is a nice free dropper. It has a well-designed flipper tab that's canted back. You could do a light switch on it, or you could do a push button. Now, it does have jimping, but the jimping's put up here in the top right here. I don't really understand it. They should have put it right here for, you know, the push button. I mean, for the light switch. But it still shoots out nice and fast on those ceramic bearings. The green canvas micarta scales were super comfortable because they're nice and wide, and they have two deep chamfers on the sides, giving it that contoured effect. So it fills out the hand nicely. That forward finger choil lets you lock in if you want to choke back as well. You could, having that flipper as a guard if you were to be, you know, stabbing into a barrel or something. Size comparison between the Rat Model 1 and 2, it's right in the middle of those two. The lockup on that button lock is very, very solid. No play up or down, left or right. It is recessed underneath the micarta, so you're not going to accidentally disengage it. This is a very, very fidgety knife, and it was one that I enjoyed using. It is a tip-up, right-hand carry only, deep, deep, deep carry. It went in and out of the pocket nicely and completely disappears. Unfortunately, like I said, it's not tapped for left-handed carry. You have a nice flush green canvas micarta backspacer, and I guess you could use those little holes as a lanyard hole, but I don't really know how you could fish it in there, maybe with the scale off, but I'm not a lanyard person. You got a nice flush decorative pivot right there. That's the Damn Designs signature pivot. Torx T8 throughout. Excellent job here, and one that I could highly recommend. Lastly, we have the Kershaw Iridium bar lock. This one's in D2 steel with that spear point blade, nice top swedge, nice and pokey tip there for during piercing tasks or doing those drag type cuts. Has a excellent blade shape. That point is a little bit below the center line of that pivot, so your belly's not going to be too big. You have a flat ground blade here that comes down to a decently thin edge. You have 3.5 inches of blade, and it performed good through pretty much everything I cut up. It worked well on the flat cutting surfaces because of that belly and remained sharp till the end of my testing. The ergos were outstanding due to the nicely contoured scales. However, they are a little narrow and thin at 0.45 inches thick. So my forearms and my wrists were getting a little, and my hands were getting a little fatigued during the wood shaving. Whenever I started to increase that pressure into the wood, I started to feel the pocket clip a little bit. It wasn't bad enough to where I felt like I had to stop what I was doing, but I definitely could feel that it was there. However, I would say overall it performed good with all the testing. And like I said, the edge felt really good toward the end. And I'm sure after you put your edge on it, it will perform even better. It does have some small row of jimping there that does grip the thumb okay, but not something I really find that much of a need for. Now, let's take a look at this action. It's riding on KVT ball bearings, plus you have that bar lock. So once you release that bar, it came super smooth out of box and fires out nice and hard. Let's see. I can flip it out, but, you know, normal shaking, it's not going to come flying out. I had to really stop what I was doing to stop it to make it come out. So let's see. Sucks it back in fairly nicely. You have these nice gray aluminum scales that have a nice contour on them. This is a totally ambidextrous knife because it is a tip-up deep carry pocket clip. That's tip-up left or right-handed carry, and you have that bar lock, so you can access it both left and right hand rather easily. So awesome to see. Your pivot is a T8, and unfortunately you have T6 on the body screws and the clip screws. You have this bronze accented aluminum backspacer. It's an integrated lanyard hole that you could fit a baby arm through. Quick size comparison between the Rat Model 1 and 2. It's in the middle of those two. Mine came a little off center to the left. I could probably fix it with a little bit of adjustment. Nothing that really bothers me that bad. Not sure if I said it or not, but these come in at $65. And do I think that is a little steep? It's not super far-fetched. However, I would have loved to see that to like a $50 price point. Something else that I would have liked to see is a 14C28N or even Sandvik 12C27, because that was Kershaw's thing. They used to use it all the time. I don't understand why they don't use it that much anymore. I don't know if it's just designated for their USA-made knives, maybe, but definitely would have been awesome to see stainless steel on here. However, the D2 performed nicely, and it cut, you know, as good as I need a $65 knife to cut. The knife is very lightweight as well at 3.38 ounces. I think this is going to be an excellent EDC knife, nice full-size EDC knife for a lot of people because it's nice, slim and sleek, and I think it looks good, and it's nice and comfortable in hand. They give you a good sharpening choil. Excellent job there. It's going to give you some sharpening life, so something I definitely like to see. So if you're okay with the D2 steel and you like the overall aesthetics of the knife, I could definitely recommend this one. I thought it was a good overall user, and I'm, you know, even though I like a stainless steel like 14C, I'm okay with it as long as it performs nicely, in which it did. So there you go. That is the 4 that I had for you today. If you have any questions about any of the knives in particular, feel free to let me know. Let me know what y'all think about this this way of doing this. These are knives that may not have gotten a review otherwise, and definitely ones that I think needed some airtime. And there you go. So hope everybody's having an absolute amazing day. I will see y'all on the next one. Peace.